All right, welcome. In the last video, we dealt with creating the sign-in page. So in this video, we'll get started with validating our user provided data in the sign up page. Okay, so we'll be dealing with the front end data validation from in our sign up page. We actually be doing the validation on both the front end and the back end. Okay, but we will be doing the validation on the front end so that if the user is providing an invalid input, then the user is going to get a feedback right away without making any network request. But just in case, we also have some malicious users that will find a way to bypass the front end validation, then we'll also be replicating the validation on the back end. So in this video, we'll be dealing with the validation on the front end. All right, so we are going to navigate to our projects now. I'm going to navigate to the sign up page. Okay, so we'll start with our validation in the sign up form. Okay, the data validation will be carried out in the sign up form. All right, and to validate our data, the first thing we are going to be doing is we'll be defining our schema. Okay, we'll be using Zod for our data validation. So the first thing we'll be doing is we're going to define our sign up schema. All right, and because we'll be having several schemas for sign up, for sign in, for resetting password, so we are going to have a dedicated file for our schemas. Okay, so we're going to go to our lib folder, then we're going to create a new file, and then I'm going to call it Zod schema. So I'm going to be having all of our schemas in this file, Zod schemas.ts. Okay, so the first one we're going to be doing is we're going to create a sign up schema. Okay, I'm going to use Zod, which is zid dot, then I'm going to, sorry, that's supposed to be Zod dot objects. Okay, so I'm going to close that, but first off, let's import Zod. All right, should be zid from Zod. Okay, if we don't have that, then we can as well import it explicitly. Okay, so I'm going to come here, then I'm going to import zid from Zod. All right, and if you look at our sign up form, we have 4 inputs: name, email, password, and confirm password. So here we're going to have name. Okay, so this is going to be, okay, so we have z.string. Okay, because our name is going to be of data type string, and at least our user must provide let's say 2 inputs. Okay, let's say their name must be at least 2 characters long. Okay, so we can say please provide your name. All right, and after that we're going to have the email input. Okay, do we have, all right, please provide a valid email address. All right, or we can just make it short, we can say invalid email address, and after that we're going to have password. Okay, all right, I think this one goes. Okay, minimum of 8 characters, please. Password must be at least 8 characters long. All right, okay, so okay, please confirm your password. Okay, this one should also go. All right, so after defining our schema, those are the inputs we are expecting. We're expecting name, email, password, and confirm password. And after writing out our schema, we need to refine our schema so that we ensure that the password provided by the user is also the same as the confirmed password. So we'll be using the refine method for that. Okay, so here we are going to pass message attribute and path attribute to this object. So the message is going to be password do not match if this condition is not true. If the password is not equal to confirm password, then the user is going to have this message. Okay, and the message is going to be attributed to the confirm password path. Okay, it is this path that is going to determine which of the inputs is going to be carrying the error. So now the error is going to be carried by the confirm password path. All right, so now we need to export our schema. Okay, I'm going to come here Then I'm going to export this so that we can use it in our sign up form. All right. So now we go to our form. Okay, so here we're going to be defining our form action. So our form action is going to be an asynchronous function. Okay, so we're going to call it form action, right? We're not using server action inside of this component. Okay, so if this form action, if you pass it to the form element, it's going to receive the form data arguments by default, but we'll not be passing it directly. We'll be passing it to use action state. Okay, there is another hook with the name of use action state. Okay, so we're going to have a use action state. Okay, the use action state is going to accept the form action, this function that we defined, and it's also going to accept another input. So we're going to call that initial state. Okay, so we're going to define our initial state after now. Okay, so now let's define our initial state. We can come to the top here and define our initial state. Okay, I'm going to close this. This is going to be an object, and initial state is going to be of the data type form state. All right, so let's create our form state now. Okay, so our form state, I'm going to call this form state. Our form state is going to contain two properties. The first is going to be the data. Okay, and data type is going to be, we'll be inferring it from our sign up schema. Okay, so we're going to import the sign up schema that we defined. All right, and the second attribute of the form state is going to be error. Okay, we can call it errors. Okay, so the error is going to be structured in the same form as Zod error. Okay, so we can actually create a different type here. Then we're going to let's call it field error. Okay, we'll be getting that from Zod. All right, so let's just pass it here. Let's pass the field errors here for now. Then we are going to define it afterwards. This is going to be optional because if the form submission is successful, then these errors property will not be present. But if it is not successful, then it is going to be present. Let's import Zod there. Okay. Okay, now let's define the attribute that are going to be in our field error. So one of them is going to be name. So if the name provided by our user is invalid, this is going to be customer because it is optional. If the name is invalid, then it is going to be present. If the name is valid, then it is not going to be present in the error object. So this is going to be I'm going to have underscore errors. Okay, and then it's going to be okay. So we are going to model this in the same structure as Zod error password and the confirm password, and after all that we're going to have a generic errors property. Okay, so this one will always be in the error object returned by Zod. Okay, but all these are optional because they are dependent on if any of the inputs are invalid. If it is name input that is invalid, then it is only name that will be present in the error object and this generic error attribute. So if it is email, then it is only going to be email. If email and password are invalid, then you are going to have email, password, and the errors are attribute. Okay, now let's define our initial state. Okay, so our initial state is going to have a data attribute. Okay, and initially on page load, all of our inputs will be empty, so we're going to make them empty. All right, I actually have a separate video that explained all this, how you can persist your form data after submission. You know, by default in React 19, React is going to automatically clear out all your inputs whenever you process a form. Either the processing is successful or the processing is not successful. React will always clear the inputs. So all we are doing here is to ensure that if this form submission is not successful, then we return the data back to the form so that we persist the data after submission. But if the form data is successful, then we are going to clear out all the form data. Okay, so that is all we are doing right now. Right now, let's go to our form action now. Okay, so by passing this form action to this use action state, then we are going to be having two inputs by default. Okay, assuming we pass this form action directly to the form, we're going to have only this parameter, this argument. Okay, but by passing it to this now, then we'll be having two parameters. The first is going to be the previous state. Okay, so this one is also going to be of data type form state. All right, and our form action is going to be returning a promise that is going to resolve into form state. Okay, so first off, we're going to be getting out all our data, which is what we've got in it, but we're going to put all of this inside of a inside of an object. Let's call the object raw data. All right, so we're going to put all of this inside of this. Oh, sorry, I want to copy all of this. Okay, then I'm going to get rid of all this. All right, then this, I'm going to paste this here. So I'm going to turn all this to colon. Okay, so get rid of that. Okay, so now we are good. Okay, so and all this is going to be comma. All right, and then we are going to be asserting that they are of data type string. Okay, so that TypeScript is not going to be giving us unnecessary errors. All right, I'm going to clear this out. Okay, now after getting out our data, after extracting our data from the form data, okay, so we are going to first validate our data using the schema that we defined the other time. Okay, so we are using the sign up schema that we defined, and then we pass the raw data. Okay, so this validated data is going to be an object, and inside of the object we are going to have a success attribute. If the data validation is successful, then the success is going to be true, but if it is not successful, then the success is going to be false. All right, so we are checking now. If the success is false, then we are going to be returning an error result. Okay, so we are going to say inside of our return object, we're going to have the data object, and the data is going to be the raw data that the user sends to us. We will be sending the raw data back if the validation is not successful. Okay, and then we are going to return an error object that is going to be containing a formatted ZOD error. Okay, so what do we have? A property confirm password is missing. Oh, sorry. Okay, so what we have in our schema is underscore confirm password, but what we have here is confirm password. So we are going to have this. All right, so after validation, if the data does not pass our validation, then we are going to be returning the data back to the form. Okay, so if we don't return the data back to the form, then React is going to automatically clean up all the inputs from our form. All right, but by returning this back to the form, then we are going to use this to populate the form so that the form is not automatically cleared. Okay, now, so if our data passed the data validation, then we are going to be sending the data to our server, and we'll be using server action for that. So we'll be calling the server action inside of a try catch block. All right, so we'll be calling our server action inside of the try catch, but for now we've not defined our server action, so we can write it out here. So we can say send validated data to server. All right, so let's just write it out. We define the server action very soon, so we can say response. Okay, if you are not using Next.js, possibly you are using Node, you are using your preferred backend. Okay, so you can use the fetch API, but we'll be using server action since that is available in Next.js to easily process our data. So I'm just going to let's say the name of my server action is going to be local sign up server action. Okay, server action. Then I'm going to pass my validated data up to my server action. Okay, we'll be having this error because we haven't defined our server action. My response, the response is going to be an object, and on that response object we're also going to have a success attribute. So here we're going to be checking if the sign up is successful, then that success is going to be true. If it is not successful, then the success is going to be false. So here we're going to check if we're going to check if success. Okay, so then we're going to be returning the initial state. Okay, so let's just call it initial state. If the sign up is successful, then we'll return the initial state to clean up the data in the form. All right, so we're going to say if response is what we'll be getting back from our server action. Okay, then we're going to be returning initial state. But before returning the initial state, we're going to call the toast function. Okay, so toast.success. Okay, so we have sign up successful. Please check your email to verify your account. Or alternatively, we can just pass the message that will be coming from our server action. We're going to have response dot message. Okay, so we'll be having message coming from our server action. Okay, and if there is no message will be coming anyway, because we are the one that will define it eventually. But just as a backup, we can just use sign up successful. Okay, now if our sign up is not successful, that means if this success attribute is going to be a boolean value, it's going to be a boolean value. So if it is not successful, then we are going to be showing an error toast to our user. But before we show the toast, we are going to check if there is an error message on the response. So we're going to say if response dot error. All of this will be much more clearer when we've defined our server action. Okay, so we have errors. All right, you know, from our error structure, you can see that it is an array of string. All right, so but it is not always populated. If there is no error, then this one will not be there. But if there is error, if there is a generic error, then it will be there. All right, so that is what we are checking at this point. We are checking if that generic error is populated. All right, if it is populated, then we'll be passing that error to a toast. So we're going to have toast.error. All right, so we show that toast to the user. All right, and then we are going to be returning. Okay, we are going to be returning the user provided data to populate the data, so that the form to populate the form, so that the form is not automatically cleared. Okay, so we need to close this conditional block here. All right, need to close that. Okay, so I'm going to save that. Let's add the comments here. So we're going to say if there are errors, return the raw data and the error. All right, so that is going to be all for the try parts of our block. Now in the cache block, just in case there is an error while we are calling our server action, maybe there is a network error or there is a redirect error from our server, so we'll be caching the error in the cache block. All right, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check if it is a redirect error. So we're going to say if error is redirect error. Okay, because let's say a user that has previously registered on our app, but the person has not validated their account. So if in such cases, that user will be redirected from the server action to the verify accounts page. Okay, so we are going to check if the error we are getting is a redirect error. Then we are just going to clear up our form. Okay, so we're going to have a conditional statement. We're going to say if error. Okay, we've not defined what our error is, so we're going to say catch, then we're going to have error. So we're going to say if the error we are getting, okay, is an instance of error. So if it's an instance of error and the error message contains a redirect error, so we're going to say and error dot message, if error dot message includes, okay, we're going to use includes, okay, it is actually not redirect. In Next.js you have it as next redirect. Okay, so if it is a redirect error, then we are just going to return our initial state to clear up the data in the form. All right. Okay, so we're having this error here. Property message does not exist on type response. Oh, sorry. So this is supposed to be instance of error, not instance of response. Okay, it's supposed to be instance of error. All right. Now, we are just going to, okay, let's quickly define our server action, but we are not going to be writing out all the logic, but just to get rid of this error. So we are just going to define our server action. Okay, where should we define that? Let's go to our source. Okay, so just going to, okay, it's not going to be side of app, it's going to be on the same level as app and component. Okay, so let's call this, okay, so we're going to call it actions. All right, actions, and inside of actions we're going to have another folder called auth. Okay, and inside of that we're going to have a local sign up dot ts. Okay, so it's going to be a TypeScript file. So we have actions, we have auth, and then we have a file, and inside of this file is where we are going to be having a server action. So inside of this file we're going to be importing an async function. The server action is going to be an async function. Okay, so I think Copilot is working along with us. All right, so we're going to be defining the input and return data type. Okay, so we're going to be receiving raw data as an argument here. Any data that is coming from your client, you treat it as an unsafe data. So we're going to call it raw data because you never can tell what your user is up to. Okay, so we're going to define the data type of our raw data. Okay, so we're just going to get this from our sign up schema. So here we're going to have zod.infer. Okay, then we're going to be inferring it from our sign up schema. Okay, so we're going to have type of, okay, then we have sign up schema. Okay, so now let's also import zod. All right, okay, and then let's define the data type of our return value. It's an async function, so we are going to having a promise. All right, let's define the data type of our returned value. Okay, so we are going to call it action, that is our server action result. Okay, we can call it response, we can call it result. Okay, if the sign up is successful, then the data type is going to be an object that contains a success of true. Okay, so if it is successful, and then we're going to have a message which is going to be string. All right, but if our if the sign up is not successful, then we're going to have a success of false. All right, then we're going to have error. Okay, this is going to be the same. This error is going to be the same error type that we have here, this field error. So let's just export this, or rather than exporting it, because this is this component is, it should be a client component because we are using a client API. So we are going to make this a client component. So we are going to come up here. All right, and then we are going to have a use client because of the client side APIs that we are using. So rather than exporting this from the client component to server action, we can just copy this. Okay, so this is going to be the data type of the error that will be having here. All right, and alongside the success value and the error, let's call this errors. Okay, so we are also going to have the data that will be returning back to the user if there is an error. All right, this one is going to be of data type. We are going to be inferring it from our Zod schema. Okay, so we can just copy it from here and copy it from here rather than retyping it. Okay, so this one is going to, we're supposed to have that there. All right, I'm going to paste that here. Okay, so our server action is going to be returning a promise that is going to resolve into this action results data type. All right, and just to get rid of all these errors, we can just return, let's return a success. Okay, so sign up success just to get rid of all those errors. And for now, let's just console log our input data so that TypeScript can just keep quiet. So let's say raw data. Okay, so we are good with this now. All right, so now let's import the function here. Okay, so where are we? All right, we've imported that. Okay, so what do we have here? Function lacks ending return statement and return type does not include undefined. Okay, I think we are omitting a return statement here. Okay, so this is going to be errors. Okay, and it's going to be errors. Okay, so this is also going to be errors. All right, okay, so we've gotten rid of all of that. Okay, so now to take care of this error, that's one of the beauty of TypeScript. It's going to catch some errors that you are likely to omit. So that error is coming from this part. You know, this return statement is conditional. So what if this condition is not true? So that means we'll be returning undefined, and undefined is not part of the returned data type. Okay, so now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be handling some unexpected errors, some errors that may occur unexpectedly. Okay, so we're just going to call the toast function, and then it's going to be toast.error. Okay, and then we're going to say unexpected error, please try again. Okay, and then we're going to return, the user data back so that the form is not cleared. Okay, and errors and unexpected error occurred, please try again. I think we are good with that. Okay, so we are done with the form action, and now let's pass it down to our form. Okay, so this use action state is going to be returning some properties, and one of them is going to be the state which we are going to use to persist the data to our form, and then it's going to return a function that we are going to be calling action. You can call it whatever name you like. And the third value it is going to be returned is going to be a pending value. Okay, so it's either going to be true or false. When the form is processing, it is going to be true, and when it is not processing, it's going to be false. All right, so we're going to be passing that pending value. I'm going to be passing it to our submit button. Okay, so we're going to say is pending. Okay, so we are good with our submit button now. All right, and now let's use our state and action. Okay, so the action, I'm going to pass it to this action attribute of the form element. So now we need to deal with our state. So first off, we're going to pass a default value to our form input. Okay, so initially on page load, so the default value is going to be an empty string, just as we have here. All of them are going to be empty, but as soon as the user is providing input and submitting the form, then we are going to have value. So if the form submission is not successful at any point, we'll be returning the data back, and then the data is going to be assigned to this state. Okay, so now we'll be passing the data to the input. Okay, and like I said, I have a value that explicitly explain this. Okay, so you can just grab the video, the link is going to be in the description. Then you understand better how you can prevent React from resetting your form data if the submission is not successful. But if it is not the behavior you want, you can as well get rid of all those. Okay, so this is giving us error because we are not accepting default value as a prop when we define our form input. So we are going to take care of that in a minute. So we need an additional prop that we want to pass to our form input component. Okay, but this is not what we want to pass to it. We are going to check if the error we are getting back from our form action, if the error does not contain it, then we are just going to pass undefined. But if the error object contains some field errors, then we are going to be passing the field error down to our form input. Okay, so rather than passing the error directly, we're going to have a utility function and that is going to check if the error object we are getting has some field errors in it. Okay, so here we're going to have a function, and then we're going to call the name of our function as field error. Okay, this is not what I want. All right, so this is just going to be field data type of field error, and this is going to be the return value is going to be either true or false. Okay, so we're going to say if it is true, then that means error is field errors. All right, if it is true, then that means the error object contains some field error, and if it is false, then that means it doesn't contain some field error. So here we're going to first check. Okay, so we're going to say if error object is not true, then we're going to return false. But if error object is true, then we are going to check. So we're going to return. We are first going to get all the keys from the we have object.keys. We are going to get all the keys from the error object, and then we are going to check if there are some other attributes in the error object that have the same name as the input we have on our form. You know, this, for example, this is the structure of our error object that is coming from Zod. Okay, if there is an error, but the error is not concerning any inputs, any field inputs, then all of this will be false. We only have this. So this one is a constant value. It is always in the error object. Okay, so now if it is a field error, we're going to be checking if the error object contains any of these field inputs, any of this either name, email, password, and confirm password. So that's what we want to check here. So we're going to say this one is going to return all the keys in the error object. Then we're going to check. Okay, so we're going to say if some of the key in the error object is not the same, it's not equal to errors. Okay, this one should do. Okay, sorry, we're supposed to have an arrow here. If there are some keys that are not the same as this, that means the error object is field errors. But if it only contains this, that means it is not field errors. So we can say, okay, let me just call this errors. All right, so now we can now use this function to check if we are getting field errors. So we can say as field error, then we pass it. Okay, is this correct? It's a little bit correct, but not totally. So I'm just going to get rid of all this. All right, so what are we having here? Okay, argument of type field errors undefined is not assignable to parameter field errors. This is field errors. Okay, this is the issue here. Okay, this error is coming because, you know, these errors, there is possibility that it will not be true, because if our form processing is successful, we are, where is it? Okay, so if our form processing is successful, we are only returning the initial state, and the initial state does not contain any error. You know, when you just load your form, there will be no error now. Okay, so that means our data type here is going to be either field errors or undefined. Okay, or undefined. All right, so that's going to get rid of that error. So on the remaining form input, okay, so default value, and okay, so that's going to work for us. Okay, and this one also default value and field errors. Okay, and yeah, okay, so I think we are good now. Now we need to accept this prop. We need to accept them in our form input. So we're going to go to our form input now. Form inputs, okay. And then we're going to be accepting default value. Okay, default value should always be there, so it is not optional. All right, but errors is going to be, is it error or error? I don't know what's this one is going to be optional. Okay, so it's going to be an object, and inside of that object we have, okay, so that is going to be the structure of let me see if it is actual error. Okay, so that is what we are passing there. So now we need to get our error from the prop now. Okay, this default value will be captured with this rest operator. Then it's going to be distributed into the elements using this spread operator. But our error now, we're going to be using this error to conditionally style our form inputs, just in case there is an error on that field. Okay, so we are going to make this template literal so that we can conditionally style our form input. So we are going to come here. Okay, so we're going to do some string interpolation there. Okay, so let's just type this out. So we're going to say if error is true, then we're going to be giving it a border of red. Okay, so border, I think I'm going to finally have to turn off copilot. Let's see. Well, let's see. So we are going to give the input a border of red 500, and then we're going to give it a background of red 50, just a slight red background. But if error is false, okay, then we are going to be using the previous border color. Okay, so it's going to be gray 200. I'm just going to cut this out of there. Then I'm going to put this here. Okay, and then on over, we're going to give it border of gray 300. All right, so now we are done with this. Okay, so what are we left with here? What is giving us error? Okay, so there is nothing like this. Okay, so now we are done with our data validation on the front end. Let's test this out and see if we are actually on the way. Okay, so I'm going to zoom this in a little more. So let's say my email address is, I'm going to provide an invalid email. Okay, this is supposed to be for sign up with not handled sign in data validation. Okay, so let's say my name is Toyosi. Okay, and my email, okay, I'm going to provide an invalid email. Okay, I'm not using Google. Okay, so let me just provide a wrong password. Okay, let's see if we, okay, so you can see now our data validation is actually working. You can see this is an invalid input. Okay, and this is an invalid input. Okay, so we've omitted something there. We're supposed to have an error message here, and we're supposed to have an error message here. Okay, so this is why we're actually passing data back to the form. If we don't pass the data back to the form, so as we have an invalid submission now, React is going to clear out all these inputs by default. That is React 19. It's going to clear all these inputs. Just now that we have an invalid submission, that means we need to refill all the inputs. But by passing down, whenever there is a validation error, by passing down the actual data back to the form, we are able to persist the data. So now let's show some error messages here. Okay, so we're going to be doing that in our form input. So we're going to come after this input element, and then we're going to have we're going to first check if error is true. Okay, if it is true, then we are going to have a paragraph. All right, and let me close the. Okay, so if this error is true, let me close this. So what you are going to be having here is going to be error dot, I think this is errors. That is error. Okay, so we have error. All right, error dot errors to errors. Then this one is actually a string. Okay, it's an array of string. All right, so if this is true, if the error is true, you know, error has the possibility of two values. Okay, it is either undefined, like we have here, it is either undefined, or the error object. Okay, so if it is the error object, we're going to be printing that out, but if it is undefined, then this will not be rendered. All right, I think we should be good with text rate 500, so that it is not too deep. Okay, so now you can see that we have error messages on any of the concerned inputs. Okay, so let's you can see our input is actually a standard input. I'm going to provide the same value to both and see what we have. You can see now. All right, so that is good for okay, let's just provide valid input for all of them and see password and the password. Okay, I'm going to sign up now. You can see that our sign up is successful. That is the toast. Okay, that is, you can see our toast there, and you can see now that we have a close button on our toast. Okay, so our sign up is successful. We have the toast call there. Where is the sign up form? Okay, so if we have a successful response from our server action, I'm trying to look at the, okay, so if it is success, then we clear up the form and we call the toast here. Okay, so that is why we have this sign up successful. Okay, but we are supposed to have the rest, the message. What is the message we are getting? Okay, it is actually the same as sign up successful. So now we are done with the data validation for sign up. Don't forget to give this video a like, all right, and subscribe to the channel so that you'll be notified for more videos. Okay, so that'll be all for this video. I will be seeing you in the next one.